Well, welcome everybody to another episode of our Win Talk Radio with Women Impacting the Nation. And we're so excited that you're joining us today. We have an incredible guest today with us. But first and foremost, I want to introduce our two awesome co-hosts, and that's Janique Stewart and Carrie Campos. Now, our other compadre, whatever, Debbie Healy, is on location in North Carolina. But we're just really excited to have our guest today. That's Mark Mink. And Mark is not only a good friend of ours, but he's the state chairman for Protect Human Life Florida, which is a sponsoring committee for the Citizens Initiative to place a proposed amendment to the Florida Constitution on the 2024 ballot. And I'm just going to read something that, Mark, I didn't know this about you, even though we talk all the time, but I didn't know that you were adopted as an infant. Mm-hmm. And as a result, you've always had a high regard for the sanctity of human life. And so your passion is to defend the defenseless, and you're inspired by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, his admonition to drive a spoke into the wheel of injustice. And in 2018, this led you to answer the call to fight for the constitutional rights of those who cannot speak for or protect themselves. And we've just been, I feel, we at WIN and myself, we feel privileged that we've been able to get to, do some things with you. I know you did the petition, we tried to do this a couple of years ago. And I want you to explain to our audience what you're doing, what transpired at the last trial of trying to get the amendment on the ballot, and what happened and why. And WIN, we're not massive, but we're mighty, and we got about 50,000 petitions, and so we feel privileged to really kind of jump on board with you again, and because life is so important, and life is God's heart. And so welcome to our Win Talk Radio, and we'd love to hear from you and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then Janique and Carrie, I know, have lots of questions for you.
Well, thank you, Sue. I'm so honored, and I'm so grateful to Women Impacting the Nation. When you and I first met, we had a very long meeting. We talked for many hours about this issue, and it was clear that you had the same heartbeat that we have for the protection of preborn human life. And then I had the opportunity to connect with Debbie, and now we've got Janique and Carrie on the line, and I'm just really thankful for your support. And as you mentioned, yes, this is a continuation of our effort to qualify for ballot placement, which in Florida is a tall order. It's a long road to hoe, so to speak. And so I look forward to giving some updates and sharing more about that. I do want to say something about the adoption story that I think is important, because the adoption process, in my case, it was a closed adoption. In the mid 1960s, I grew up knowing that I was adopted, but that's really all I knew. And I spent 50 plus years of my life very comfortable with that. I'd always known. My parents did a great job explaining what that meant, the significance. I've got an adopted older sister. And so I grew up actually kind of feeling bad for my friends that were not adopted. I felt like they were second-class citizens who were simply born into their families. And in my case, I've been raised to be told how special it was that we were adopted, and that my parents actually went out and made a choice to bring children into their home that they didn't conceive in birth. And so I've just always been a pro-life guy, and grew up comfortable with that. But it's interesting to note that on my 52nd birthday, my wife's parents gave me a DNA test as kind of a gag gift. And I submitted my DNA, because that's what you do when your mother and father-in-law give you a DNA test. You submit your DNA, right? And I was miraculously reunited with my birth mother. And she had submitted her DNA the same month that I did, I guess, and it took a while to connect. And I had a kind of a dream come true opportunity, because I'd had people ask me through the years. They would say, have you ever wanted to meet your birth mom? And I would tell them that, I was very comfortable having been adopted, so I wasn't really on a journey. I wasn't really searching. But every year on my birthday, when everybody was singing happy birthday to me, part of me was wondering what she was thinking if she was still alive. My thought was, she's got to be thinking on this day at least, where is this guy and what happened to him and how did his life turn out? And so I had always had this mindset that if I ever had the opportunity to meet her, I had two things I wanted to share with her. And so this DNA test gave me an opportunity to communicate through kind of an anonymous email communication through this DNA company. And I basically sent her a communication sharing my gratitude that she had chosen life and had carried me full term. And then letting her know that I did not have any regrets for having been placed for adoption, and that I was thankful, that I felt like the Lord's hand had been on all of it, and that I had ended up where I was supposed to be, and that it allowed me to grow up in a loving home with a mom and a dad that wanted children, and to meet the wife of my youth, who we've now been married for 30 plus years, and conceive the children that the Lord's blessed us with. So that just cemented for me that there's a better decision than the decision to terminate life, and that if a woman finds herself in an unplanned pregnancy, which was the case with my birth mom, who was a teenage unmarried young woman who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and first time out got pregnant. My wife and I struggled for almost 10 years to conceive our firstborn child, so we know the pain and the frustration of waiting and praying and hoping and believing and being disappointed month after month after month. And then, you hear the stories where some young woman maybe finds herself in a bad situation, or a situation she shouldn't be in, and boom, she's pregnant, and what's she going to do with that life that's growing inside of her womb? And in this case, my birth mom, by the grace of God, chose life. She chose to do the heavy lifting and carry me full term. And then she made another beautiful decision, and she handed me to somebody, assuming she would never see me again, and allowed me to be adopted. And in God's providence and in His grace and His kindness in her life and in my life, but especially her life, gave her an opportunity over 50 years later to be reunited with me and be able to see that the story turned out happy, that it was a happy ending, and meet grandchildren that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And so all of that really frames my passion for what we're doing. And I know that's probably more of an intro than you were expecting, but I'll pause there, and then you tell me what direction you want to go in.
Well, it's I thank you for that, because I think it's important that we know the backstory of people. I mean, a lot of times it's but I understand that, because it took us a long time to have our son, and so it is a gift. And then I'll say it out here now, I'm going to be Safta in December. That means grandma. And we just found out that our son and our daughter-in-law are expecting, and we're having a little girl. So she'll be the youngest WIN member.
That's great.
And then actually next week, we're celebrating our oldest WIN member, and she's going to be 100 years old.
Oh, that's
so we're going to be right in the middle there. But I thank you for that, and that, because I think that's important for us to know. But I just want you to say, tell the mission of what Florida, what the Human Life Amendment does, and then I know Janique and Carrie want to ask you questions. So, but give us the background of, why you started the Florida Human Life Amendment and why that's so important. And then we'll get into, I know that there's other people that aren't on board quite right, and we just need to talk about that and why, so we can get because we really want to be kingdom builders here. We don't want to be castle builders. And we at WIN, we talk truth and we take action. And we like to have dialogue of why, so that we can be learned and teachable. And so, but go ahead, Mark.
Well, and Scripture says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so it's important for us to know what's going on so we can make wise decisions. And our effort is as simple as this. We want to see every preborn human life recognized and protected within our state constitution. Our governing document was established, or ratified rather, the current constitution that we're governed under was ratified in 1968. I want to say that it may be the fifth or sixth one we've been governed under since we became a state in the early 1800s. And so this document was ratified 5 years before the Roe v. Wade decision. And while it does speak to the protection of human life in Article 1, Section 2, it really is not clear that human life also includes the preborn. And I don't know the mindset of those that were involved in the drafting of the document, the ratification, but my guess is that in 1968, it wasn't on the top of anybody's minds, preborn human life, because we were 5 years before Roe, and there were still laws all across the country protecting the preborn. And so when you look in the Florida Constitution and you see that reference to the protection of life, there are 34 references to the word life in the Florida Constitution. It's a 100-page document if you print it out. And if you did a word search through the whole 100 pages, the entire document, there's 34 references. 21 of them deal with wildlife. There's some that deal with the life of an amendment, life imprisonment, and private life. But there's not a single reference to the preborn, to preborn human life. And even in September 18th, we're going to see the Florida Supreme Court address the privacy right amendment from the 1980s that was approved by Florida voters and try to determine whether or not that includes the right to abort a preborn child. And so there's just been some ambiguity in our document as to whether preborn life is protected or not. So our effort is an effort to place a proposed amendment on the ballot that seeks to recognize the God-given right to life of every preborn child and give Florida voters the opportunity to approve our amendment to enshrine within our document that recognition. I think it's important to state that we're not asking Florida voters to give the right to life to the preborn. The preborn have a right to life that's given by God. It's a God-given right. It's an unalienable right. We just want our state document to recognize it and protect it.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question? Because we actually signed at our church, we did a big 4th of July service, and we signed the petitions. And I guess I'm wondering, how many petitions does it take to get an amendment on the ballot, or for voters to vote on it? And where are we at with that, of how many more you need?
Yeah, great question, Carrie. So in the state of Florida, the requirement is that we have to secure enough petitions to equal 8% of all the votes cast in the previous presidential election in our state.
Okay.
And so we live in a state that has 14 plus million registered voters and 12 plus million voted in the 2020 election, which is the number we're governed by. So it's 891,523. So that strange number, 891,523, is the state required threshold. And to get that number of validated petitions, you've got to get about 1 million petitions signed, because you're going to have some that are going to not clear through the validation process for various reasons. Someone forgot to sign it, they're not a registered voter, or something like that. And so we have until February 1st of next year to qualify for ballot placement. I can tell you we have a lot of work still ahead of us. We aren't anywhere near that number. When we turn them in, the supervisors of elections take up to 60 days to validate them. So Carrie, if you handed me 100,000 petitions today that were signed, and we turned them in today on, what's today? We've got July 27th. Then the supervisors of elections of the various counties would have until September 27th to validate them. And then they wouldn't appear on the state Florida Division of Elections website until October 1st. So there's a lag period. And so that's one of the reasons that we have to stay so diligent, is that at any given time, we don't know. I'll give you an example. I know that Women Impacting the Nation has been extremely diligent in getting petitions signed. But you know what I don't know? I don't know how many petitions that Women Impacting the Nation have on hand that are signed right now. Do they have 50? Do they have 500? Do they have 5,000? And we have volunteers all across the state that are collecting petitions. So on any given day, I don't have the vantage point of knowing the exact number that we have. But what we try to make all of our volunteers clear on is what the deadline is, what the goals are, and what the timelines are, so that we can get these things turned in as quickly as possible and have a chance to qualify for ballot placement. I can tell you this, the initiative that is also circulating a petition around the state from a group that refers to themselves as Floridians Protecting Freedom, which is the effort to, the ballot title is Amendment to Limit Government Interference with Abortion. They're sending out communications where they are disclosing the number of signed petitions that they say they have on hand. And one of the reasons I think they have such a good handle on how many they have is they are utilizing paid petition gatherers. Now, they also have volunteers, but the vast majority, about 80% of the petitions that they claim to have received so far, are coming from paid gatherers. And the paid gatherers have a state requirement that they have to turn those in within 30 days of getting the signatures. And because they're collecting them on the spot, I think they have a better feel for how many they have. And they claim to have over 500,000 petitions already. And they've only been at it for 90 days. So we've got some catching up to do and a lot of work to do to qualify for ballot posting.
You know, one thing I wanted to say, Carrie, are you in Martin County?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where
So
our church is.
I keep this on my phone all the time when we're in different counties, and I talk to everybody. I said, okay, and you're in Martin County, depending on what county you're in, but you're in Martin County, and in Martin County, you all have phenomenal churches. Your church, your Revive church, I always say Revive on I-95. Just get off the Stewart exit. It's phenomenal. Pastor Todd and then Carrie's, Pastor Todd and Jan are the pastors, and then Carrie's husband is also an associate pastor, Massey Campos, and they're phenomenal. And but if we got every church like Revive just did, and to do these petitions, Martin County only needs 12,264 petitions. And then if we go to each county, that you kind of, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. So it makes it a little bit easier. And then Debbie and I she figured out the other day that I think if we got 100 petitions a day, we could get that done. So you try to make it even more, dumb it down. Mm-hmm. People go, oh, I can do that. So if we can do that and get the thought process going, it would be amazing. But so Martin County, for those of you that are listening, that's 12,264 petitions. That's all you guys need just in Martin County. And, then we have Indian, what was it? Indian River County. I think that's above, that's where Brenda is. I think that's, they've got a great group up there. But anyway, so that's kind of what I like what you've done, Mark, is you made it, for me, I'm very visual, and I like to see, to make it easier for people, because when you hear, oh, we need 1 million signatures,
sounds overwhelming. Right.
It's very overwhelming. We're never going to get that. And then all of a sudden, the devil comes in and going, oh, well, you can't do anything. Well, all I say is we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And if this is God's heart, he's going to help us do that if he chooses, right? Anyway, so I just wanted to
go ahead, Carrie.
I was going to say, for the actual thing that they need to fill out and sign, is that hard copy, or can they do that online?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The state of Florida dictates how it works. And even though we live in an electronic age where it could be done electronically, and we all know that, the process doesn't allow for that. So we have to physically turn in the actual signed petition. That's one of the things that makes this hard. And that's why you see that some of these efforts will pay so much money to hire petition gatherers, because they just, you've got to get that actual signature. And not only do we have to collect the signature, but then we have to turn it in. So for example, the Martin County petitions that come from your county have to be turned in to the Martin County Supervisor of Elections. We don't turn these in to the state of Florida. We turn them into each respective county. And so if you had a petition drive at a church that has, 1,000 people at that church, that might represent 3 or 4 or 5 counties. We see that all the time, that are people that are driving into that church, and then those have to go to those respective supervisors. One thing I want to add, and I know Janique has a question, I don't want to take up too much time doing all the talking, but Sue, you mentioned Martin County and churches. So Carrie, let me ask you a question, and I know you may not know the number off the top of your head, but if you were guessing, how many churches do you think there are in Martin County of any persuasion? How many do you think?
Hundreds?
Hundreds. Yeah. That's the answer in every county. Every Florida county has hundreds of churches. So, and Sue, I know you've got the number in front of you. Tell me the number again in Martin County that we have as our target.
12,000. Whoops, hold on a second. Where'd it go? 12,264.
Okay, so let's take that number and let's divide it by 100 churches. Okay, that's 123 petitions per church. If 123 churches in Martin County, of the hundreds of churches, would get 122 signed petitions, which most of those churches could do on any given Sunday or Wednesday evening or Saturday or through the Bible studies, it is, see, here's what's really important to understand. My experience with this initiative has been that we don't have a problem getting pro-life people to sign our petition. The problem we've had is getting our petition in front of the pro-life people. Meaning, we're not trying to talk people into signing our petition. You know, Sue and Debbie were at the homeschool convention. When people came to the table and looked at the petition, this is usually what they do. I see it all the time. Someone will look at our petition, and I'm holding one now, and they'll do this. They'll say, what do you have here? And they go, Human Life Protection Amendment. An amendment recognizing the God-given right to life of the preborn individual. Yeah, I'll sign that. What do I do? Right? They don't even finish reading it. Like, if it connects with them, if it resonates with them on that level, they're all in and they want to sign it. The problem that we've had is making pro-life Floridians aware that our petition exists. And the reason that that's a problem is we don't have corporate entities throwing tens of millions of dollars at our effort that allows us to hire petition gatherers to chase people down in the parking lot when they go to Sam's or Publix. And we don't have the budget to advertise and send direct mail pieces to every Florida voter. So we rely heavily on groups like Women Impacting the Nation, and even more specifically on churches that are like-minded in each respective county to present this to their members. And that's one of the reasons on our website, at the very top of our website, we have a banner ad that, and our website, I know Sue will send this out, and it may even appear on this program at some point, but it's humanlifefl.com, humanlifefl.com. And at the top of the website, there's a little banner ad, and it says something like, click here to read the letter to the Florida church from Eric Metaxas. And the New York Times bestselling author who wrote the book Bonhoeffer gave us a statement of support on our website, as Sue Trombino did from Women Impacting the Nation, and we're honored to have that. But he also wrote a 2-page letter that encourages pastors to go to our website, where we have a specific tab on our website just for churches that walks them right through what they need to do to get involved. And I can tell all of you that are watching this call from all over the state that there are more than enough churches and more than enough pro-life voters to qualify to get the 1 million petitions by the February 1st deadline if we can just engage them and make them aware. That's the essence of what we need to do in the remaining time.
Very good. I guess I have a question in terms of clarification. When we think about the enemy, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but he is also the author of confusion.
Yes.
A lot of times with amendments, the devil is in the details. It's all about the wording. What are the opponents actually trying to say about this petition, and how are they sowing confusion?
Well, and Janique, let me just make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about how are they presenting their petition? Or,
yes.
Okay, so their petition.
And even misrepresenting what you're trying to do with the Human Life Protection Amendment.
Yeah, great question. I will tell you this, up until recently, and understand, they just got started. They started circulating their petition. Let's see, I'm looking at their document now, and they got approval on May the 8th of this year to begin circulating their petition. And so they've just really gotten started. And so for the first 2 months of their actions, there was no mention of our initiative. They haven't given us the time of day. And honestly, it's because when they look at the Division of Elections site, our contribution report, we don't have tens of millions of dollars pouring in from groups across the country. And we don't have hundreds of thousands of petitions that we're turning in every month. And so I think they just largely just kind of dismissed us as irrelevant, which I can understand. Now, lately, they're starting to, in some of their communications, make reference to what we're doing. But they're really just pointing out our lack of funding and our lack of petitions. So they're just kind of saying to their base, you know, there's really nothing to see here on the other side of this issue. In terms of what they're presenting, though, it's all, you know, you talked about the devil being in the details. Let me just read their proposed ballot summary. Or actually, I'll just read the proposed ballot summary. So the title is Amendment to Limit Government Interference with Abortion. And that's pretty clear to me. I mean, they don't want the Florida legislature interfering with access to abortion. On their website, they have a very direct statement that I'm grateful for their being forthright. It says in big, bold font, put abortion on the ballot, exclamation point. And on the website, there's 5 or 6, there's a collage of angry young women, very diverse group of young women. And they're all angry. They're all just staring at the camera, black and white pictures, and they're just mad. And they're mad because the Florida legislature passed a 15-week ban, and then Roe got reversed, and then they passed a 6-week ban, and now they see this as an interference in their reproductive rights and their ability to make their own bodily autonomy decisions and their choices. And everything about their proposal centers around their desire to be able to have the right to abort a preborn child, terminate a preborn child's life whenever they want to. So the language reads this way.
Hey, Mark, real quick, before you start reading that, we have to take a break real quick. So
Okay.
we'll just take a real quick break, and then we'll come right back and you start reading that, okay?
That's
And then you
perfect.
can go from that if you don't mind. But we're going to be right back. You can go to womenimpactingthenation.org, and we just have to take a, like a break, and we'll be right back.